There's a couple of things I wanted to say, and I know that we've been really clear about how we want to focus on housing, but for me there's something really crucial about housing, and that is that it actually impacts on absolutely every single part of a person's life. So, it's impossible, for instance, to stay well if your home is damp, if your home is cold and you can't afford to adequately heat it because it's so inefficient. It's impossible for your children to reach their full potential with their education if there's nowhere that is quiet and for them to actually sit and do their homework because they're in overcrowded accommodation and sharing their room with 3 other people. Martin touched on it earlier. It's impossible to feel safe in your own home if you're in temporary accommodation and you're sharing it with people that are coming in and out, and you're in the middle of a community filled with people who are living in chaotic lives, and your life is chaotic as well. And it's impossible to thrive economically and build a future for you and your family if your housing costs are so huge that they prohibit you from actually developing and moving on in other parts of your life. So that's why housing's really, really important, excuse me, for me, and it's why it's something that's really at the heart of what I believe in and why I'm standing in the coming election. House prices have been rocketing in Southend for a decade at least, if not more. And people are being left behind. We've heard that said before. It's impossible to imagine what somebody who's doing, some really valuable community-based jobs. I work in local government, so I know the issues that people face. Our librarians, our nurses, our cleaners, they do not earn enough money simply to put a roof over their families' heads, and it's appalling. But why is social housing so important? Social housing is important not just because it's more affordable than so-called affordable or private sector housing, but because social housing is not just an investment in now, it's an investment in our communities forever, and we keep it in social ownership and we can keep providing that service. I've just got a few things to say. Why is it important in Southend? As of September, there were 1,400 families on the housing list in Southend. 1,400. 592 of them are living in temporary accommodation, and 320 of those are children. 320 kids living in temporary accommodation. And we've got a piece of land just up the road which we could build 400 houses on. Now, you don't need a GCSE in maths to work out that that's going to go a long way to solving that problem. And this really works. I met recently with Karen Davies, who's a councillor in Norwich, and she's been working on the Goldsmith Street development, an award-winning development of social housing, council houses that are eco-efficient, and they're housing people that desperately need housing. My last comment, because as you know, we're in the middle of this election, which means I'm out talking to people. Just this morning, I was on Southend High Street, and this young woman came up to me with a baby in a pram, and she's in her early 20s, and she said, I'm living in 2 rooms just off the high street. My mother-in-law wants us to move away. She wants us to get out of Southend because we can't afford to live here anymore. So I love it here. It's where my partner's job is. I think it's a beautiful environment. I love our town. Please, please, can you do something about housing so that I can stay here? And that's why I think this campaign is so important. Yeah, people moving to Southend from London, and it's a massive issue, and that's why we need social and key worker housing, because, I don't blame people moving out of London. You can sell your 1-bedroom flat in Hackney and buy a 4-bedroom house by the sea, okay? I understand that, I get that. Excuse me. And this campaign isn't about saying, let's get rid of private homes. But fundamentally, what that's about, and the knock-on effect of people buying houses, is that the prices go up. And that's why we've seen a lot of house prices going up and up and up in the borough, which is why we need social housing and key worker housing. I think that's really important. I think it's really important that we talk about that level of mixed development actually on Foss's Farm. It's about social housing and key workers, so that we've got people that are going to provide our services. Excuse me. In terms of Goldsmith Street, Councillor Karen Davies, who's involved in that, is a good friend of mine. She's a little busy at the moment because she's trying to become the MP for Norwich North, but I'm sure she'll be happy to speak to us after the general election. The other thing I wanted to pick up on was, who was it? So Mark, I think, said, what do we do next? You said, what do we do next? Oh, the local plan, which Martin has touched upon. But I do think that the local plan is also, that covers the vast majority of the town. So whilst the council wants overall mixed developments, that doesn't mean to say that there isn't room for social housing and key worker housing on specific sites. It doesn't preclude that. That's my understanding. What do we do next? You know what? We've talked a bit about Homes England. Homes England are basically doing what they're being asked to do. The government wants to be able to say that it's built loads of houses, because that's a great news story, right? We'll promise to build X number of houses, and they build those houses. But they don't really mind if they're bought by profiteers who just want to become private landlords and rent them out at astonishingly high rents. Excuse me. So that's the issue that we've got. But Homes England is a government agency. Homes England is the agency that the government uses to deliver its ambitions. And whilst I know someone said, this is a political problem and we do need political solutions, and you'll not be terribly surprised that I think that the best way that we challenge Home England, a government agency, and we change what their priorities are, is we change the government, and we get to do that on the 12th of December.
Thank you.